I'm a sucker for nature films. I saw that online a couple nights ago. Louis Schwartzberg's a cinematographer and director, and his kind of other hobby is time-lapse photography, so he's kind of a leader in time-lapse. I love to see that stuff. Some cheesy music kind of came with it, and so I asked them to mute that and had Josh just play that. That was cool, Josh. Thanks. That should be the music with that. That was great. But yeah, I don't know what it is about nature films and stuff like that. Maybe, of course, there's just the beauty of something like that, especially in time-lapse where you see it moving. But I think it's just that I have this kind of wonder that there's all this life that is happening, beneath my awareness and beyond my awareness, the penguins doing their thing in the Antarctic and caribou up in northern Canada, all this stuff that's kind of beyond things that I'll ever see, and I wonder, who is this for? There's no audience for all of this. But then I realize, well, God is the audience. God created this. He just loves life. He didn't have to create the world. He was perfectly content with the fellowship of the Trinity. And he didn't have to create us. But God gives life because God is life. God loves because God loves. I was reading Fred Sanders' book, The Deep Things of God, this last summer, and he just simply says the good news of salvation is ultimately that God opens his life to us. He opens his life to us. And you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me that the primary terms of the gospel, as we are in a year of proclaiming the gospel, as our chapel theme, it reminds me that the primary terms of the gospel are really life and death. In the passages that were read by the band in the set, there was Proverbs 8. For those who find me, says wisdom, find life and receive favor from the Lord. But those who fail to find me harm themselves, and all who hate me love death. So there from the sage we have these primary terms of life and death. This is what God is offering, life. In that long list of blessings in Ephesians 3, we heard from Ephesians 2. And here's Paul now. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sin. He didn't say you were wrong, although you were wrong, we were wrong. He didn't say we were deceived and false, although we were deceived and false. He said, actually, the term is you were dead in your transgressions and sins. But God, because of his great love for us, made us alive in Christ. So there you have it again. The primary terms of the gospel are not necessarily right and wrong, or not necessarily true and false, although those are critical. But the primary terms are life and death. This is what's on offer. And then, of course, Jesus, very plainly in John 10, 7 through 10, says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. The thief is offering death. But I have come that you may have life and have that to the full or abundantly. And of course, later in John 15, Jesus is going to kind of link us back to some of those images we saw when he talks about the vine and the branch. Because in God's economy, life means being connected to God, and death means being unconnected to him. It's like those trees in Psalm 1. It says, how blessed is, which means how happy is the person who meditates on the law day and night. The result of that is he's like a tree, or she's like a tree firmly planted in streams of water. These images of nature, of life, of something being life-giving. So these are the kinds of things we need to be thinking about and talking about with people. The life that God offers. Now, we've had to talk about a lot of other things the last 100 years, Christians have, because there have been other things to talk about. Modernist science and its materialist worldview has basically said, really what exists is only what we can measure quantitatively. And so Christians have had to talk a lot about, no, that's not true. Science and some of these other quantitative skills and sciences are not the only ones that determine what's real. And so Christians have had to talk a lot about reality and a lot about truth these last 100 years, especially with the more aggressive atheism coming into play more recently. So we've had to talk about what is true and real, and we need to continue to do that. We've also had to talk a lot about right and wrong the last 100 years. Because where once the kind of Christian worldview, at least ethically and morally, was taken for granted, no matter how well people applied that, still it was considered the kind of set of ethics and morals that were to guide life. Now we live in a pluralistic age in which there are all kinds of lifestyles, all kinds of moralities, all kinds of philosophies of living. And so we've had to increasingly talk about right and wrong, especially since those who hold strong convictions about life or about morality are considered to be, are put into suspicion and considered to be narrow-minded. So we've had to talk about these two things a lot the last 100 years. Had to talk about truth, had to talk about right and wrong. The collateral damage to that is that as Christians we come to be seen as people who are really only concerned about being right and really only concerned about legislating other people's behavior. That may be an unfair characterization, but that's kind of been the collateral damage of what we've had to talk about to open people to the gospel. But from time to time, we need to center ourselves at least and recall that finally what God is offering, all this work we do in apologetics, all this work we do in defending the truth, is simply to open people up to God's invitation to life. So the primary terms are life and death. And so as we do that, as we ponder that this semester, I invite you to do that. I invite you to experiment with the life God offers. How is God calling you to actually experience and learn more about this life? Jesus says, of course, that sometimes you have to lose your life to find it. So it's not always as easy as simply following our desires or following what we want to find life. But this is what God has called us to. This is what He has created the world for, to share His life, this life, with us. And so I encourage you this semester, as you begin to think through the weeks ahead and the months ahead, and among the very, very many stresses and issues that will come up, to ask the Lord, how are you calling me to experience life in you? And this morning we wanted to also take some time to look over some of the offerings that we present to you this semester and to invite you into finding God and finding life in these offerings. So at this point, I'm going to ask Lisa Ishihara to come up and talk to you a little bit about some of the chapel programs. You all received a card coming in, if you would kind of wave that around. Cool, you got it? Everybody's got it? We're going to be referring to this. This woman here does a ton of stuff for chapels every week with all these teams. We have about 50 students involved in chapel programs. 120 chapels a year, yikes. So please give Lisa Ishihara a hand.
Good morning, everybody. So as you walked in this morning, you received one of these cards, so if you want to go ahead and take them out if you haven't already. If you haven't gotten one, you can pick one up at the front after chapel. You'll notice on here that we have all of our chapels listed out. So on the front side, you'll see all of our Monday morning chapels. And these are all of our word-based chapels. So we're trying to follow the theme of looking at the scriptures on Monday, and then returning to it again on Friday. So some of you may have already heard about our dwelling chapels, but what we hope to do is to be able to give you moments to sit and to be with the Lord, and to allow the word that was taught on Monday to just dwell richly in you. And so if that might be an opportunity for God to bring life to you, to meet you in that place, then we invite you to really plan ahead and maybe think about coming to those chapels. So we hope that the Mondays and the Fridays will look a little bit like a pair. If you continue down your card, you'll see Wednesday Wisdom Chapels. And so what we try to do in the Mondays and the Wednesdays is note on here what the speaker will be speaking on. So why don't you just take a moment or so just to kind of glance at that card and maybe prayerfully at the same time ask the Lord, God, is there something that you want to teach me this semester? Is there something that might bring life to me? How do you want to work in my life as we think about chapels coming up? So go ahead and just take a look just to glance over those. Then if you want to flip your card over to the back side, we are very thankful to our Talbot School of Theology, and so they lead us in chapels on Tuesday mornings. So you'll get to see on here some of the speakers that are coming up. You can also check out the Talbot website, and they often will list the titles of the messages that the speakers will be giving. Also on here, just glance down a little bit to the Thursday chapels, and this has just been an opportunity for us just to join with other departments on campus. And so we've been working with apologetics, especially for this semester, as we look at proclaiming the good news in a changing world. We've been bringing in some people to speak to how do we share the gospel with people who come from a postmodern perspective. And then we've also been working with multi-ethnic programs and development to really look at how are we the community of Christ together, and what does a diverse body look like. So some of these on here you may also want to join us for. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Chad. Oh, yeah, Tom.
Hi, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my interaction and experience with fives and Sabbathing. It'll be on your card. Over the past 4 semesters, I've been going to fives just about every week. This most recent semester, I've become a little bit more involved in the organization and kind of the behind-the-scenes work. And because of my involvement, a lot of students have asked me, what is fives like? And the most consistent response that I have given, is that it's sort of like a spiritual rest. We as students, we are really good at getting things done and making the most of all the hours that a day gives us. Being a student demands a lot of our time, a lot of our energy, and there are a few things worth investing in more than our education. But it seems that spiritual growth calls for something a bit more than productivity and efficiency. It seems to call for a healthy combination of rest and reflection in the midst of, and sort of as a fuel for, our efficiency and productivity. As a student, I'm not very good at rest. I'll say that right off the bat. I'm not very good at reflection. I have a lot of things to do, and it doesn't seem very efficient. But I've seen through the chapel programs that we have, through the lives of mentors and guides, that rest and Sabbath is a necessity in the Christian life. I've seen the sort of discipline and the effort that it takes to live a life of balance and regular spiritual habits and rhythms, and I've wanted that for my own life. Fives and Sabbathing both have been a wonderful place for me to begin to learn to kind of adapt those things, those rhythms, those patterns, that consistency into my life. These opportunities that fives and Sabbath affords us has given me an opportunity for quiet reflection, and it has given me the space and the time to refresh and recharge my heart and my soul in the love and presence of God. The sort of rhythm that we participate in fives and Sabbath has helped me to develop a routine and a consistency with which my heart and soul are refreshed. And during this last semester, I've got to see firsthand the leadership and the people who are involved in making Sabbath and fives a possibility. I've got to see the sincerity and depth with which they take their role, not in just fives and Sabbathing, but also throughout all their interaction in Biola. And that has made me even more thankful and more full of gratitude as I've got to experience fives with them. And so I wanted to invite you guys into that, to come and see what fives is like. It's a bit more liturgical, and it's a bit more of a slow pace. But those things are well worth getting used to, and I think you guys would really enjoy it. So we meet at Calvary Chapel at 5 on Tuesdays. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Tommy. Just quickly want to just say, to sort of reiterate what Tommy was saying, fives is rest, Sabbathing is rest, and the rhythms of rest and reflection themselves can teach us and instruct us and help us grow spiritually. It's less about insight gaining, it's less about following an argument, and it's more about rest and resting in what you already know, and more about listening. And so if you are looking for margin in your life where you can listen or rest in the things about God that you already know, fives and Sabbathing might be something for you. So like Tommy said, it's in Calvary Chapel on Tuesdays at 5, and then there's a Sabbathing on the 9th of February, so that's next Saturday. And so we would just invite you out to that. So take a look at your card and sort of go over your semester and think, where might I be able to fit that in if that's something that sounds like it might fit for me?
So as Tommy and Chad have given us just some glimpses of what some of these times with God might look like, we also wanted to invite some of our students to share some glimpses about Singspiration and After Dark.
My name's Steven. This is my second year at Biola. I'm a sophomore. And one of the highlights of this past year and a half has been After Dark. It started early when I was a freshman. My dorm was having its first all hall. It was a Wednesday night. Oh man, my voice still cracks, and I'm a sophomore. I'm sorry. Anyway, so it was a Wednesday night all hall. My voice cracked, so I'm not very social. I thought, well, I guess I'll go to After Dark. They can't give me crap because I'm going to chapel. It's a win-win. And then I just didn't stop going after that. I could tell that After Dark was run by students, for students, and I like that a lot. I leave almost every week thinking, man, these guys just nailing it almost every time. And now I see that's because the heart of After Dark, it's simple. It's to meet students where they are and then build up and encourage from there. This year it's been a little different because I'm on staff and it's a trip. As much as the focus is to serve students, that process itself has shaped me just as much as the chapels. Because you see, I was surprised to even be on staff. I lacked the compassion I thought would be necessary. You hear students and student leaders talk about, how they're fired up and how they love Biola and its students, how they love missions. And the honest truth is that I've never been able to relate to that. It's just not there. But then now I'm in a position where, in a sense, I'm forced to do those things. I'm forced to pray for you guys and care. And that's gone a long way in softening my heart. You see, I used to think that these things disqualified me from being able to serve. But now I see that it doesn't take a heart that's put together well. It just takes one that's willing, a heart that says yes. I see now that when you say yes, God will work despite the grit and the rough edges. And not only that, He'll work those things out of your heart. But it begins with saying yes.
Singspiration? Anybody? Yeah. Singspiration is unique because it is a chapel that's solely devoted to musical worship. And we have musical worship in all of our morning chapels, but we extend it to a complete hour on our Sunday evenings for Singspiration. And I'm so encouraged all the time to see so many Biolans come together, united with the purpose of glorifying our Creator. At Singspiration, we can be real with God and just invite Him into the chaos of our days and the depths of our hearts. And it's not only for people who are joyful in their walk with Christ, because I think it's easy to just be like, worship, yes, we're stoked. But it's also we can just be super real. Because I remember a time at Singspiration where the worship leader called us to consider a time we've been angry at God. And that was super important for me to, it was really helpful to realize that it's okay, to come to God with our frustrations and just where we're angry with Him, but just to be real and honest before Him. But I think Singspiration is just an hour of devoted intimacy, and after that, on Sunday evenings, we can go into the week with a refreshed and renewed assurance that He'll be with us every step of the way. So come on out to Singspiration.
I think sometimes we're really ready to go to chapels, or there's certain ones that maybe we've looked over this list and you know exactly which ones you want to go to, or maybe God's prompting you to go to something. But sometimes there's just times where we don't really want to go to chapel either. And I think that that's an okay thing. I think God knows that. I think God is exactly with us and present with us as we wrestle those things out with Him. And so I'd like us to just take a moment just to be honest with God in prayer, to talk to Him about what's going on in your heart, what's going and coming up as we talk about chapels, and invite Him to be present with you in that. For some of us, it's going to be a discipline to offer ourselves to God when maybe we don't want to. And there might be other times that we just get to celebrate and do that, and it's very easy. So as we look at this card again, or just spend a moment in prayer with the Lord, would you offer yourselves to Him?
There is an opportunity for spiritual development credit that's not on the card. How many of you have taken part in spiritual direction before? Go ahead and raise your hand if you've done that. And how many of you knew that that actually counts for chapel credit? Yeah, spiritual direction. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about our hope for you as spiritual development is that the programs, the chapels, and the offerings that we provide can help you to become more aware of the ways that God is working in your life, to notice what he's doing so that you can cooperate more fully with him, so that you can move deeper into the life that he has for you. And corporate worship, corporate learning is an important part of seeing and understanding God's work in your heart. But there are moments and sometimes years in our lives with God that we need another person. Just one other person, someone on the outside, to help us understand what God is doing. So times of transition, times of confusion, times where there are so many choices in front of you, or times where you're feeling like maybe God is not hearing you, where you're not sensing his presence, these are incredible opportunities for spiritual direction. Spiritual direction, you sit with another person for 45 minutes once a month to talk about what life is like with God. It's kind of a misnomer, the word direction, because spiritual directors are not there to give you advice. They're not there to tell you what to do. They're just there to help you notice what God is doing so that you can more fully live your life with him. If you're interested in spiritual direction, you can sign up for it across campus. Over by the tennis courts, there's modulars over there. The office of the Institute for Spiritual Formation is there. You can sign up. And if you have more questions about this and what it is, feel free to talk with any of your peers who raised their hand, who've taken part in it before, or come talk with one of our staff if you'd like to know more about it. And actually, if you have any questions about your life with God right now, if you're curious, if you have doubts, if you have frustrations, something that you need to talk with another person, you are more than welcome anytime to come talk with any of our staff about what life with God is like for you right now. Again, our hope for you in spiritual development is that you would use these offerings to grow more deeply with God, to notice what he's doing, to cooperate more fully with him. And so as the music plays, I'd like to invite you again to consider the card and everything that's been offered for you today, but also where your heart is, and simply ask him, Lord, what's good for me this semester? What this semester will help me move more deeply into life with you?
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.